Yeah. So we're here. Let's talk a little bit about the Uno outsourcing claims. As you said, Uno, it's your understanding that Uno is suing for monies that it paid for payroll services, correct?
Right.
And you're saying that it was the PSA Inc., correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay. However, all of the invoices that you provided in your exhibit.
Wait. Sorry. We need to start again. I hadn't realized my court reporter wasn't set up yet, so that was my fault. So start again, Mr. Veenstra.
Yes. Good afternoon, Juan. Or good morning, Juan. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you.
So I even did that right, Your Honor. I said the same thing earlier on the first go around. I couldn't get it right the second time. All right. So we're here today focusing on the Uno claims. What we're here is because Uno had claims to provide services, payroll services, and that they had been paid for, correct?
Correct.
And it's your contention that Uno provided those services to Uno or to PSA Inc., correct?
Yes, to PSA.
Okay. Yet in your in the invoices that were provided and that are made part of this case, the bill to is PSA Valve and Machine LLC, correct?
Yes.
And you understand that's the entity, that's a separate entity from PSA Inc., correct?
Objection. Calls for speculation. Calls for legal conclusion. Excuse me. Sorry.
Actually, if you know the answer, you can answer, but don't speculate.
Can you repeat the question, Sam?
Do you understand that there's two separate entities, correct? PSA Valve and Machine LLC and PSA Inc.
Yes, I know.
Okay. And you've sued two separate entities, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And on your invoices, and you can look either at exhibit, plaintiff's exhibit, I think it's 2, or defendant's exhibits 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, and 16 to see that each of those invoices do in fact say PSA Valve and Machine LLC is who we're billing to, correct?
Yes, I can see.
Okay. And
You need to speak up. Juan, you need to speak up.
Yes.
so the nowhere on these invoices is PSA Inc. listed, correct?
No,
No, it's not correct, or no, it's not listed.
it's not listed.
Okay. And these are just a handful of your invoices, but you sent invoices to PSA Valve and Machine LLC for over the course of 4 years, correct?
Yes.
And there were always the PSA Valve and Machine LLC, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And not a single invoice ever said PSA Inc., correct?
Not a single. I cannot say not a single because I don't recall all the invoices for 4 years.
Okay. But at least you know they all said they were PSA Valve and Machine LLC. When we, and if you have, with looking at exhibit D2, which is just invoice 496. Okay.
Wait, say this again. Exhibit what? D2?
D2. D as in defendant, number 2.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. You're going to have to share screen those. I don't have copies of your exhibits.
Okay.
I mean, you can also use it as plaintiff's exhibits. I have all those.
Okay. Yeah, I'll do that, but I'll still need to pull up some of my other ones just to have them ready.
Okay.
It's the first page of Plaintiff's Exhibit 2, if that helps, Sam. 496 is.
Yes, I was getting ready to ask it for a couple other exhibits though, so I was just kind of prepped. Um, okay, so it's, as Mr. Tobolowsky pointed out, it was in plaintiff exhibit E2, you said?
Yeah, first page of Exhibit 2, Plaintiff's 2.
Exhibit 496, yeah, it's the first page.
Okay, and so these were for it's dated 9/7/2017, correct?
496, the date for September. What you asked?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, and what I'd like to do is show you Defendant's Exhibit D3.
And it's exhibit E3.
D is in dog, Your Honor.
Okay. You can just call it defendant's exhibit 3 or plaintiff's exhibit.
Oh, okay. Okay, all right.
Using me with your.
I sorry, you know, I do a lot of petitioner and respondent too, so I always do the P and the R for that reason. And R sounds a little easier on the ears. So with Defendant's Exhibit 3, this shows some earning statements for multiple, 2 or 3 different employees for PSA valve and machine. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right, and it shows that the pay dates for these checks are September 7th, 2017. Is that correct?
Yes.
And do these these 3 pay stubs, do these match the payments you made for invoice number 496, which is dated September 7th, 2017?
I don't have the information because no, I don't have the information to confirm that.
Okay, would you normally send, like, if you send out checks on a date, would you send out an accompanying invoice that same day?
Yes, yes, actually before, because we run the payroll a few days before, and then when I have the total amount for that payroll, it's when I send the invoice.
Okay, so if we had it like invoice 496 that's dated September 7th, 2017, is it fair to say then that is for the paychecks you would have sent out on September 7th, 2017?
Yes, probably.
Okay. And is there anybody else that would know better than you?
No.
Okay. And so when we look at the defendant's exhibits D3, and we'll just look at the first check here for Mr. Cantu. It states what Department 16 is PSA valves and machine, correct?
Yes, that's what it says, yes.
And does Department 16, does that reference your client or your customer?
No, it's the location.
It's a location?
Yes.
And so could you have multiple customers in one location?
Can I have multiple customers in one location? Yes, it can be.
Okay, so who else would be in Department 16 with PSA valves and machines?
It's no, I think that's the only address. It's PSA. Yeah, the address for PSA. That's the department. As you were asking, the department is where the checks are delivered. Yes.
Okay, so you're saying the department refers to an address that the PSA valve and machine checks are sent to, correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay, and there's no other checks being sent to that same address
Objection, Your Honor.
for any other customers of yours?
Not that I recall.
Okay, and on here, it shows that the company that these people worked for is, or at least what the company that's referenced is Uno Outsourcing, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and that's going to be the same for each of these pay stubs in Defendant's Exhibit 3 when we refer to Jamie Cruz and Roberto Vasquez, correct?
Yes.
And each of these people, do they, because they're going, the reference, the PSA valve and machine, that indicates that's who they work for, is that correct?
Yeah, it's the name of the department. Yeah, it says it was named under PSA valve and machine.
Okay, which is, that's who you bill your services to then, correct?
Yeah, is it the same? Yes.
Okay, and nowhere on this defendant's exhibit 3 is the words PSA Inc. or a reference to the entity PSA Inc. Is that correct?
Can you repeat the question?
Is there anywhere in defendant's exhibit 3 a reference to the entity PSA Inc.?
No.
Okay. And now if we go back to your plaintiff's exhibit 2 and we look at the second page, which is exhibit 499, or I'm sorry, invoice 499.
Yes.
That's dated September 21st, 2017, correct?
Yes.
All right. And then looking at defendant's exhibit 5, these are 3 paychecks, again, for Mr. Cantu, Mr. Cruz, and Mr. Vasquez, dated September 21st, 2017. Is that correct?
Yes.
And is it fair to say that these are the checks that you prepared and processed that were then invoiced on invoice number 499 because they're the same dates?
Yes.
Okay. And again, is there any reference to PSA Inc. on any of these checks in defendant's exhibit 5?
Can you scroll down to see if I?
Mhm.
No. I see.
And if we go to back to plaintiff's exhibit 2 and look at invoice 502, we're dealing with an invoice dated October 5th, 2017, correct?
Yes.
And defendant's exhibit 7 are those checks that correlate to October 5th, 2017 in that invoice, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And once again, there's no reference to PSA Inc. on any of those checks. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And once again, PSA valves and machine is that entity that is shown there, correct?
That entity that is showing there, what do you mean showing there?
On Department 16?
Yeah, the name of the department, yes, it is PSA valve.
All right. And so to streamline this a little bit, I have defendants exhibits 9, 11, 13, 15, 16, and 17, which are all copies of these checks that were sent to these various employees. Do you agree with that? And do you have them in front of you, or do I need to show them on the screen to you?
We don't have them in front of them.
Okay, so defendant 9, defendant's exhibit 9. Defendant's exhibit 11. And if I'm going too fast, please let me know. Defendant's exhibit 13. Defendant's exhibit 15. And defendant's exhibit 17. would you agree that these are all checks that were, again, for the PSA valve and machine?
Objection, confusing and misleading.
Were these all checks
You
that were?
understand.
I'll rephrase it. These are all checks in the defendant's exhibit 9, 11, 13, 15, 17 that were issued to employees for PSA valves and machine, correct?
No, I cannot affirm if it were employees of PSA Valves or PSA Inc.
Well, then let me rephrase it. You were sending these checks. I mean, they're all referenced PSA valves and machines on your Department 16, correct?
Yes, as I said, for the location, just as I said, Department 16 doesn't only means it's a location. It's where the checks are sent.
Okay, and each of these checks correlate to the invoice for that respective date, much like we did for those first 3 invoices. With these next 5 batches, the checks associate to the invoices 505, 508, 511, 514, and 517.
Yes, and I can say it's a proof that the service were provided, that we send those checks. That's, yeah, linking these earnings statements with the invoices.
Okay, and once again, the client listed for you as to who you're billing to is PSA Valve and Machine LLC, and that's who's represented on each of these checks that are cross-referenced to those invoices, correct?
Can you repeat that question? It's kind of confusing.
So the PSA Valve and Machine LLC is listed on each of those invoices, each of the 8 invoices that you're trying to collect on today, correct?
Yes.
And when we cross-reference the checks that you provided with those invoices, PSA Valve and Machine is also referenced on each of those checks, correct?
Each of those checks, yeah. I mean, it's a proof.
Okay.
The service.
Right, and PSA Inc. is not listed on any of these checks either, that entity, correct?
Checks, no.
On these exhibits 9, 11, 13, 15, and 17, PSA Inc. was never listed as one of the.
Mr. Veenstra, I get the point here. You don't have a jury. You don't have to beat it.
Okay.
I get what you're trying to
Okay.
get at, and it makes sense.
Okay. So at no point in time was PSA Inc. ever referenced.
No point in time.
I'm going to show you exhibit D18. And this is similar to, I believe,
Plaintiff,
defendant's exhibit, or plaintiff's exhibit,
number 1.
number 1. And so you can use that as a point of reference if it's easier to see than on the screen here with me. But isn't it true that the only name that's listed now on this page, on this document that you created, is PSA Inc., correct?
Yes.
And there's no reference to PSA Inc. on anything else in your records when it comes to invoices or the checks. Is that correct?
Objection. I'm not sure what checks.
The checks that we've gone through in exhibits D3, or defendants exhibit 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, 13, 15, and 17. There is no reference to PSA Inc., but now all of a sudden we have a reference to PSA Inc. when we talk about a customer balance detail, correct?
Yes.
Just so you know, you have that sideways. I'll try to read it, but
Sorry, I can
it's okay.
move it. Sorry, Your Honor, I don't want to make you have to turn your head sideways.
Okay.
Okay, so, and this represents those same invoices that are included that were in exhibit, plaintiff's exhibit 2, that we've gone through, which include the 8 invoices you're trying to collect on, correct?
Yes.
And at some point in time, you changed it to say PSA Inc. at the top of this page, correct?
Yes, correct.
Now, one of the individuals we saw in these various checks was a man named Joe Cantu, correct?
Yes.
And you don't know Joe, correct?
No.
Okay, so you don't know who he works for or who he's has worked for or who he's currently working for now, correct?
No. No.
Okay. I'm going to refer you to Defendant's Exhibit 19. And this appears to be the W-2 that was prepared for Mr. Cantu. Is that correct?
I'm going to object, Your Honor. This was not pre-admitted. We would object to this exhibit as hearsay.
Okay. Response?
If I can lay a foundation, because I believe Mr. Paragar's company prepared these documents.
Okay, go ahead and lay foundation.
So, Mr. Paragar, is it as part of your services that you're providing, was it to prepare the W-2s for these individuals?
Yes.
And would you have been responsible for preparing this W-2 for Mr. Cantu?
Yes.
And so this would be a true and accurate copy of that W-2 that your company prepared, correct?
I mean, I cannot confirm that. No.
Well, you produced it in outsourcing produced it in Discovery, correct?
Can you repeat that?
And this is something you all produced in Discovery, correct?
I'm sorry, I don't understand what you mean by in discovery.
Let's move along. I'm getting this. Let's move along.
Okay, so I would like to offer Exhibit W or Defendant's Exhibit 19 in the evidence.
Defendant's Exhibit 19 is admitted.
And Mr. Cantu, again, is the employee listed here, correct?
Yes.
And it shows that the employer, though, is Uno Outsourcing, correct?
Yes.
It's not PSA Inc., right?
Yes. I mean, that's yes.
Okay, and it's not PSA Valve and Machine LLC.
It is not.
And so Uno Outsourcing, your company, is listed here as the employer for Mr. Cantu, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and when we look at Exhibit 7D17, this was the last, this was Mr. Cantu's paycheck from December 14th, 2017, correct?
Yes.
And this would have been the last paycheck you provided to Mr. Cantu in 2017. Is that correct?
2000. I cannot confirm that.
Okay, well, you guys aren't, you're not trying to collect on any invoices after December 14th, 2017, are you?
Give me 1 second. No.
Objection.
Okay. And
Misstates this prior testimony and the evidence in the record, including the
Response?
I'm just trying to establish whether or not this would have been the last paycheck they issued to Mr. Cantu.
I'm just going to say, don't speculate. If you know that's the answer, you can answer, but don't speculate.
So Juan, is this the last paycheck you would have issued to Mr. Cantu? To the best of your knowledge?
To the best of my knowledge, yes.
Okay. And one of the things that we can compare here is his gross pay for year to date was $26,804.16, correct?
Yes.
And if we go to exhibit D19, the amount that was reported for his earnings for 2016 or 17 was the same amount, $26,804.16. Is that correct?
Yes.
So is it fair to say that may have very well been his last paycheck you provided to him?
Yes. In 2000.
Okay. And is it fair to say that you issued a W-2 to Mr. Cantu in the name of Uno Outsourcing, yet you were paying him paychecks on behalf of PSA Valve and Machine LLC?
Not on behalf of.
You need to speak up, Juan. Speak up.
No, I gave him the check on under Uno Outsourcing because he was as an employee of Uno Outsourcing. That's what we paid him. Yeah.
So you're saying Mr. Cantu is actually an employee of Uno Outsourcing, not an employee of PSA Valve and Machine?
Uno Outsourcing was the one who was paying them. Yes.
Okay, so Mr. Cantu is your employee, not Mr. or not PSA Valve and Machines?
Yeah, it's Uno Outsourcing employee. Yes.
And was that just for purposes of the W-2 though, correct?
For payment purposes, yes.
Okay, you didn't hire Mr. Cantu, did you?
No.
But counsel, you're getting way far afield of what the issues are in this case. I understand how this works. He's a temporary employee.
Okay.
This really has nothing to do with the disputes we have here today. So let's move along.
Really quickly then, I have exhibits, defendants exhibits 20, 21, and 22 that are W-2s for Mr. Cruz, Mr. Gutierrez, and Mr. Vasquez. I offer that they be admitted in the evidence for the same reasons that defendants exhibit 19 was, which they were created.
What exhibits 20, 21, and 22?
Yes.
We would have just on relevance, Your Honor.
Yeah, I don't know that this is extremely relevant, but thank you. But I'll go ahead and admit them, but let's kind of move along.
Okay. Yep. In your affidavit, that was the plaintiff's exhibit P3. This was dated January 17th, 2019, correct?
You should have it.
Okay, what date you said was dated?
January 7th, 2019, I believe.
17, yes.
Okay, and in paragraph 3, you're referencing an agreement that you guys that was entered between Uno Outsourcing and PSA Inc. and Mr. Perez, correct?
Yes.
Okay, we don't have a copy of any agreement, do we?
No.
And there was no written agreement, was there?
No.
Okay, so when we look at an agreement that was in place, this was really something that you, we don't know what any terms are. We don't know what any conditions are to that agreement, correct?
And there's no written agreement. It was more
Okay.
like verbal agreement.
Okay, and so we don't know if it was PSA Inc. or PSA Valve and Machines that this agreement, this purported agreement was with, correct?
No, I mean, it's PSA, it was PSA basically.
Objection to the non-responsive portion after no.
Overruled. You can proceed.
And you also state in paragraph 4 that PSA made payments on all the invoices issued by Uno Outsourcing. Yet we know that's not accurate because PSA Inc. did not make all the payments, correct?
Can you repeat that?
You state in paragraph 4 to your affidavit that PSA made payments on all the invoices issued by Uno Outsourcing, yet we know that's not accurate, correct?
Sorry, you said, I'm reading what it says, number 4.
What exhibit is this again?
Exhibit P3 in paragraph 4, or plaintiff's exhibit 3, Your Honor.
Okay, can you repeat that, the question again, please?
Okay, so in paragraph 4 on plaintiff's exhibit 3, you state PSA made payments on all the invoices issued by Uno Outsourcing. However, we know that's not accurate, correct?
Some of the payments, they were by other PSA company, yes.
And by Mr. Perez, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so we know that was an inaccurate statement when you made that in January of 2019, correct?
He's clarified that. Let's move on.
Okay. And the checks that you provided in your exhibits, in plaintiff's exhibit 17, 18, and 19 only account for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 payments that were received from Uno Outsourcing, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and it's only from, sometime in 2016 through 2017, correct?
Yes.
And yet you were receiving, you were providing services to PSA Valve and Machine beginning in 2013, correct?
Yes.
And you were getting paid for those services at that time as well, correct?
Yes.
And you were getting paid by PSA Valve and Machine, correct?
No, I was paid by PSA Inc.
But you didn't provide any other checks to show that PSA Inc. paid these bills, correct?
Because
You only provided 6 that were from PSA Inc. There weren't any other checks provided from PSA Inc.
I didn't include the full list of all the payments made because in April 2017 the account was current. At that time, it was when everything started to being past due. That's why the checks that it was included starting in April 2017. But the previous checks they were paid by PSA Inc.
And I understand that, Mr. Perez, but some of these checks you provided predated April of 2017. There's one from December 1st of 2016. There's one from November 15th of 2016.
Objection, is there a question?
So isn't that correct? So you provided checks that predated April of 2017, right?
You have the checks.
You want me to show him an exhibit?
Sure. An exhibit P or plaintiff's exhibit 17, the very first check is before that you have provided, and that's part of this case now, predates April of 2017, correct?
Objection, relevance.
Yeah, sustained. Let's move on.
At the time that Uno Outsourcing started doing business with PSA Valve and Machine, did Jose Rodriguez work at the office in Iowa Colony where PSA Inc. was headquartered?
I mean, what do you mean work?
Did he have an office there?
I don't know if I don't know if he was a permanent office or not. I mean, I know he was there, but I don't know if he was a permanent office.
So you don't know what his working relationship was and what he was doing at that office in Iowa Colony?
No, exactly not. No.
Okay. But he was, as far as you know, he was in and out of that office quite a bit and may have even had an office that he called home, so to speak, for work purposes. Is that fair?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And isn't it true Mr. Rodriguez was one of the members and or an officer or had some control over PSA Valve and Machine LLC?
I don't know.
And in all the checks that you showed that were shown here today, there was never any checks that Uno Outsourcing paid to Paula, correct?
No.
Okay, and no checks were ever paid to Lido, correct?
No.
Okay, and that's because Paula works for PSA Inc. and you were paying for services for people at PSA Valve and Machine. Is that correct?
I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know if she worked for PSA Inc. or not.
Did you and Mr. Rodriguez ever have conversations about the PSA Valve and Machine account and what Uno Outsourcing was doing?
Conversations about the account?
Yeah, and like taking care of payroll and stuff like that in those 4+ years that you're providing services to PSA Valve and Machine. Did you ever have conversations with Mr. Rodriguez about the case, about that account?
Yes.
Okay. And was he the one, he was the one who set up this account with Uno Outsourcing, correct?
No, I think it was Paola, the one that sent me the information to put it on the invoice and the employees' information to add the employees to set up.
Okay, so let me rephrase it a different way. Was Mr. Rodriguez the one that made the introduction between Uno Outsourcing and PSA Valve and Machine?
It break up. I mean, we couldn't.
Okay, was Mr. Rodriguez the one who made the introduction between PSA Valve and Machine and Uno Outsourcing for Uno Outsourcing to provide services to PSA Valve and Machine?
I don't remember who made the introduction. If it was,
okay.
Yeah, there were different people involved, but I don't remember who exactly was.
And you said you had been down to that Iowa Colony building a couple of times, correct? Or before? Okay, how many times have you been down there?
Several, more than 15.
More than 18?
No, 15, more than 15.
More than 15, okay. But you don't know who owned the building when you came down there to visit, correct?
Who owned the building?
Yeah, and who owned the land? You didn't, huh?
It's my understanding that Lido. I mean, based on comments that he said before, he's the one who owned it. I don't know legally who owns it, but it's my understanding that it's his building.
Okay. And you're not aware of any then leases or relationships that PSA Inc. would have with Lido with the use of that facility, or PSA Valve and Machine LLC with the use of that facility, correct?
No.
Okay. And you understand that Mr. Rodriguez had some type of ownership interest in PSA valve and machine?
Objection, speculation.
Do you know if Mr. Rodriguez has any ownership interest in PSA valve and machine, or had any ownership interest in it?
No, I will speculate, so I would say no.
You don't know one way or another?
No, I don't know.
Okay.
You got everything else?
Yes, Your Honor, in your plaintiff's exhibit, I believe it was 9 that was offered into evidence.
Yes, I heard you.
You made reference that Ms. Lopez had an email address with PSA valves and that she had a signature block with PSA Inc., correct?
Correct.
Okay, and your signature block though was with GMET Communications, is that correct?
Say that again?
Your signature block is with GMET Communications, correct?
My email address.
Or not signature block, your email is with GMET Communications, correct?
Objection, relevance.
Sustained. Let's move along. Come on.
Well, Your Honor, they made a reference to the signature block and trying to, I presume, imply that Ms. Lopez works for PSA Inc. and was having a conversation with somebody based on a signature block and a reference to her email address. I'm just pointing out, Mr. Paragaris is not even with Uno Outsourcing, it's with GMET Communications as well.
Okay, let's move along.
All right, with regard to GMET, you say you don't receive a salary from GMET?
Not directly.
Okay. When you agree though that it was you and Lido and Mr. Rodriguez who started GMET Communications LLC back in around 2012, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And at that time, did you guys agree for nobody to take salaries? Is that what you're saying?
Say that again, sir.
Well, let me rephrase the question. You said you get paid but not directly from GMET, correct?
Correct.
And so how do you get money out of GMET then if it's not directly from GMET?
Objection, it's confusing and overbroad.
Yeah,
I'm trying to get to, if you don't get paid a salary by GMET, but you said your testimony was I don't get paid directly. I'm just curious how you then get paid by GMET if it's not directly.
Yeah, the reason is, well, I mean, GMET do not issue me any salary based on, I mean, directly. It's all the salaries that I receive is through another company called K-Uno Franchise Management.
It's called what?
K-Uno Franchise Management.
So say that again, because we can't hear you.
K-Uno Franchise Management.
Could you spell that for the court reporter?
It's K-U-N-O Franchise Management.
And how long, and so does GMET pay K-Uno Franchise Management for services?
No.
Is that?
No.
So K-Uno Franchise Management pays you for your services that you provide to GMET though, is that correct?
No, not specifically for GMET. No, it only pays me. Let's put it like that. Yes. So all the payments that are through that company, not through other companies.
Okay.
So you got to speak up. You keep on trailing off. Can you speak up?
So,
but yet the work you do for GMET, you're paid by K-Uno Franchise Management, correct?
Objection misstates the witness's prior testimony and it's been asked and answered, I think 3 times now.
Sustain, let's move along.
And I'm just trying to understand because you're saying that you're kind of, you're saying that Mr. Lito Perez didn't get any salary, but you got a salary, but it wasn't directly through it. So I'm just trying to figure out how the 3 of you were getting paid then. And it seems like you were getting paid through another entity. Is that correct?
Yes, okay, so what's the question?
I'm just curious, how does, if you're getting paid by K Uno Franchise Management for work you did with GMET, does GMET ever pay K Uno Franchise Management then for that work?
Objection that misstates his prior testimony.
You could answer.
No, GMET do not pay KUNO franchise manager.
Okay. Does it pay anybody that ultimately gets you the money that pays that you receive from K Uno Franchise Management?
Yes, there's another company that we get paid management fees, and then from there it depends on time, work, performance, that amount. But that's what we get paid, and on that, yeah, on KUNO get paid.
Okay. GMET had some of its employees working out of Mr. Perez's building in Iowa Colony at some point. Isn't that correct?
GMET employees at Iowa Colony?
Yeah.
Maybe meetings might be, but I don't recall someone. Oh yeah, there was a lady called Shri. Yeah, she worked there for some time. Yes.
Okay. And was there somebody named Cole that worked there?
Say that again.
A gentleman by the name of Cole?
Nicole?
Cole, C-O-L-E.
Oh, no, Cole, he worked at the stores. He might
Okay.
go over there for pick up something, but his work was at the stores. Yes.
Okay. And did Armani ever work at Mr. Perez's facility in his office there in Iowa Colony?
Armani was not an employee for GMET Communications.
Okay. What about Marlon?
Objection relevance.
Going through to establish, Your Honor, that there are a handful of employees that would use Mr. Perez's property for GMET purposes. And I'm going to get to the point that these folks used it, but did they ever pay rent is essentially what I'm going to get to with that follow-up, that final question.
All right, go ahead.
So did any of these individuals that worked out of there for GMET ever pay rent to Mr. Perez for the use of his property?
They didn't pay rent? No, they did not pay rent.
Okay. And this was set up because Mr. Perez had the facility. He's trying to help GMET control costs. And he says, I'll give them a place to work right now, that we don't have to have that outflow of cash. Isn't that correct?
Here's a clarification. Just you asked me if the employees paid rent to work day. They didn't pay the rent.
Did GMET pay rent to Mr. Perez?
Okay. GMET paid rent at one point. I don't have right now with me, but GMET paid rent for that usage of partial building at that time.
And Mr. Rodriguez, he would work out of there as well, correct, for GMET?
Objection calls for speculation.
If you know, you can answer.
As I said before, he went there in and out, yes, but if permanent.
Okay. Your Honor, if I could just take a quick reset break, just to check my notes real quick and make sure there's nothing else to go through with him.
Okay.
All right, thank you. I'll pass the witness at this time, Your Honor.
Mr. Tobolowsky, do you have anything else?
I think I have just one point. I'm not gonna, I think the court understands the facts of the Uno claim. I just want to clarify one thing, and that is, and you had multiple conversations with Mr. Perez regarding the debts that are owed to Uno Outsourcing, right?
Yes.
Okay, and in those conversations, did you ever discuss, or did Mr. Perez ever inform you of his position or belief about who was responsible for paying those debts?
No.
Did he ever represent that he himself was also liable for PSA's debts and that he was going to pay PSA's debts?
Yes.
Okay, can you explain that conversation, how Mr. Perez made that representation to you?
Yeah, there were several conversations actually calling me that he knew he was behind on some bills, but he was going to pay them, that it's something that he was going to pay. And even sometimes we have conversations after providing the services of payroll. We stopped doing that. He said, I know I owe you that money. It's something I'm going to pay. I even offered him some payment plan that he agreed, but it was, I mean, he never said it is not mine. He always said it's my responsibility, and I will pay it.
When he said it's my responsibility, did you understand he was meaning the companies or him personally?
The companies.
Objection calls for speculation.
Overruled, you can answer if you know.
The company's PSA, but I mean, he was talking on behalf of PSA and even mentioned that he will personally back it up.
Okay, he himself individually and PSA Inc. Okay. Did he ever retract that understanding? Did he ever tell you you have to get all of your money from PSA Valve?
No.
Until this lawsuit was filed, were you ever told that PSA Valve is the responsible party?
No.
The first time you ever heard that was in this case?
Yes.
Okay, that's all I have. Pass the witness.
All right, Mr. Veenstra, do you have anything else?
Hold on. No, Your Honor.
Okay. Do you have any short witnesses right now, Mr. Tobolowsky, or do you want to just break for lunch? Because I do have a research assignment for you guys to do or to look at. So why don't we talk about that?
Yeah.
So, Mr. Tobolowsky, you kind of argued at the beginning of the trial that Mr. Perez should be liable for the debts of PSA Valve because he's a manager, arguably a manager of the LLC, the PSA Valve and Machine. Is that correct?
Manager and member. Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. So under the tax, so there's two documents provided, the Texas franchise. Can you go grab all of them? So I've had the interns kind of researching this issue, and they found a case out of the Dallas Court of Appeals. It seems pretty close to being on point. So I want you guys to look at it. It's Haynes v. Gay, 2018 Westlaw 774. Did you guys find anything else? Here, let me go off the record for a second. and you may not have gotten to this, but from what we've been looking, that they've been looking at exhibits, I guess, 7, 8, and 9. Maybe there's other exhibits we haven't seen yet, or not 7, 8, and 9, 6, 7, and 8. The certificate of formation of the LLC shows that the managers, at least at that time, were R&P Group and 11 Ventures LLC. The organizer was Jose Rodriguez, but then you provided us for exhibit 6 that Mr. Perez was the manager according to the Texas Franchise Tax Information Report. And so if you guys could be taking notes on this, those of you guys doing the research, there's this case, Haynes v. Gay, that says if a limited wait, guys, I need you to be taking notes. Yeah. Okay. I'm taking notes. All right. If a limited liability company's charter is forfeited for a failure to file a report or tax or penalty, however, a member is liable for each debt of the corporation that is created or incurred in this state after the date on which the report, tax, or penalty is due and before the corporate privileges are revived. And it cites to a case called Havel v. Botsri, which is also a case I'd like you guys to look at, which is out of the Houston Court of Appeals, 490 Southwest 3rd, 132, that discusses the application of that section to a manager of the limited liability company. And so from what you've given us, and again, this isn't a ruling, I do want some research on this, it appears like Mr. Perez was just a manager and not a member. And it appears the law is that if he's just a manager and not a member, he wouldn't be subject to liability. But Mr. Tobolowsky, you've said he's a member. I'm not sure where you're getting that. Maybe I haven't looked at all the other documents. Is there another exhibit that I haven't looked at, or where are you getting that he's a member?
I don't believe there's another exhibit. It's Mr. Rodriguez who is prepared to testify to when Mr. Perez joined as a member. And it's also the same time he became manager, which is indicated on the public information report. But I don't believe there was any amendments to operating agreements or anything like that to be able to document in writing.
All right, so I just want some briefing on this or case law or something. They also have, they have said that that an organizer, according to doesn't appear that an organizer would be the same as a member and would be liable according to their research. And so,
and Your Honor, my understanding is it's not in dispute that Mr. Perez was a member of Valve. And I think that
I don't think that's necessarily accurate.
anyway, I just need to, if there's just going to be testimony, there's nothing in the corporate bylaws or anything like that that showed that he's a member.
I was told this morning, in fact, on our last break by my client, that he may be able to acquire a copy of their tax return. It wasn't requested in production or anything like that, so I don't think that should be an issue. But we'll brief the issue, Your Honor.
Brief the issue. That's what we found so far. Did you get the cases that I cited?
I did.
Your Honor, I didn't get the full site for the Westlaw.
It is Haynes v. Gay, 2018 Westlaw 774334. And it's out of Judge Greenberg's court. Yeah, those are the two cases that it cites to. It's from what my interns found, and they worked very hard at this, it's the Havel case and this Haynes v. Gay case that seemed to be kind of the main cases in the area. So anyway, but if you guys find something else, let me know. And then also what evidence is sufficient to show someone's a member. I guess that's a new research project. What is it? How do you get determination somebody is a member? Does it have to be filed? So new research project for you guys and for the interns. So, all right, guys, we'll see you after lunch. We're going to reconvene at 1:15. That should give you enough time to do the research and hopefully have a good lunch. Okay.
Thank you, Your Honor.
We'll reconvene then.
And Your Honor, should we just go ahead and log out right now, or do we leave it open?
It's totally up to you.